In this video, we're looking at drums here in Logic Pro for iPad. I've got a literal stack of drums here that have been created for my song called Choices to replace the auto drummer that we used as a metronome. So let's dive in and explain what's going on here so you can follow along. Hello, my name is Pete Johns. This is Studio Live today. My goal around here is to help you create, record, and release your best music. And it is the literal middle of Songtember, the 14th of September here in Australia. And what we do in Songtember is we create a song in a month. It's our Song in a Month challenge. In fact, if you'd like to join in the fun, you can do so. Just head over to studiolivetoday.com/Songtember to find out all about it. I know many folks, many of you in the community are already creating your own songs. They're sounding fabulous, and we'll celebrate at the end of the month with a big Your Music Live listening party. But I got some pretty serious work to do here because I've got my song. This is my song called Choices. We've recorded some guitars, we've recorded some scratch vocals, and some organ that we added in a recent episode. And we also have this old drummer. It's now called Old Drummer because these were some auto drummer tracks that I put in here to act basically as a metronome. That's all we really needed the drummer to do here, was to make sure that we could record, because the thing about this track is it's a little bit complicated. If we tap here and drop down these, you can see the markers, and you can, more importantly, see that we've got multiple time signatures. This song goes through 6/8, 3/8, which is actually 9/8, back to 6/8, to a bit of 5/8, and then finishing with 8/8, some sort of standard 4/4 time. So the drums were pretty complicated, and we are very lucky in that we have the wonderful Jade Starr, who has created these drums. Now, she's used the drum, she's some electronic drum kit, electronic, whichever way you want to call it, and she's actually created these drums down here. These are the unseparated drums, so this is what she's created using her electronic kit right here in Logic Pro, recording straight in. She's then taken these and separated them out into this, a summing stack. Let's just unsolo that. A summing stack, which is a feature we have here in Logic Pro that we don't have in a lot of other platforms, especially things like GarageBand. So if you're newer to Logic Pro, you may not have played around with these. And when I say you, I also mean me, because I haven't used a summing stack before. But the cool thing about this is, as you can see, there's all of our drums, but there's multiple tracks hidden in there, like all nested in there. And then it's not until we actually tap on this. See how we go from track 1 to track 13? It's not till we tap this one that they open up. And the cool thing about this is each individual kit piece can have its own track. So the kick, the snare, the hi-hats, the toms, the crashes, the rides, the bell, all of this can be separately controlled here, but also in the mixer here in Logic Pro. So this is going to make the mixing of these drums both really good, but also fairly complicated. So join us in a future video, because we're going to be looking at those in more detail. But we're going to use Jade's original mix here of the drums, because she's put together a pretty amazing sounding drum kit and drum sound here so far. Now, this is a slightly older version of our project. So after we listen through to this, I got a job to do, which is to try and work out how we bring some things over from the newer version that I created. Because the way that we work, if you missed the last episode, is that I packaged up my project, I zipped it up, I sent it to Jade, she added the drums, and now she sent it back. But in the meantime, I recorded a third guitar, and I recorded a few extra vocals there. So the sad news is, it doesn't seem like we have the same copy and paste functionality here in Logic Pro that we had in GarageBand. So we weren't able to copy this drum sum stack and just bring it back into my project. So the easier way to go seems to be that we actually do it the other way, that I use this project that Jade has provided as my new one. It was version 8. I've now made it version 9. And what I'll do is we'll play through this, and then I'll jump over and try and copy and paste back in some additional tracks, because, as I said, it's a little bit different copying pasting here in Logic Pro. All right, that's enough introduction here. I know you're keen to listen to this song in its entirety and these drums. So what we're going to do is unstack these so that you can see each of the drum pieces. We'll bring it down a little bit so we can see what's going on here. And I'll play through each section. So we'll be able to see at the top here, we have our lead in, our intro, and then our verse 1 and our verse 2. And it's when we hit the bridge that this changes up. So I have listened to these once through, so it's not my first time listening, but I haven't had a good opportunity to really sort of dive into these and see what Jade has done here. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be epic. Shall we listen? Let's do it. Let's hit the play button. Here, we'll play through the intro and the verse and take a listen to these drums with the rest of the track. Your choices in life. Let's pause there before we jump in and take a look at the verses, which have a fairly sort of similar feel to this. How cool is that? Really, really cool stuff. It definitely links in with the bass and the guitar. So the guitar riff is kind of driving this. And from what Jade said in her previous show, where she recorded and talked about these drums, which you can check out down in the description, she decided that the very starter here, she wanted this to be simple, which is exactly what I was looking for. The original drummer track was very simple through this opening section because the guitar riff should be doing all the heavy lifting there. And then once we kick in to the O's, you can see we bring in this tom work, which I think is just really cool. Let's jump into the verse now and take a listen to the changes here, because we move up onto this open hi-hat and you'll hear the variations here and the fills that Jade's used in this one. People say lots of things, but they just don't know why. Why do you care what they think of your choices in life? And that little gap there is not the feel that I expected, but I kind of like it. Here's a good thing though. If I decide I actually do want less in there, Jade's a pro, so she's put in everything, knowing that it's easier to take away at this point in a project than to add. So I just wanted to point that out here now, that Jade's just thrown everything at this, obviously curated it to what she thinks, but I've then got the option to add things in if I want to, but I could also remove things if I wanted that pause to be a little bit more. But again, even though that particular one wasn't what I had in my head originally, I kind of dig it. And I think this is the way Jade's drums usually work with me. They usually grow on me. And by the time I've had 3 or 4 listens, I'm like, yeah, I'm going with it. Let's listen through this little interlude section into the second verse. Choices in life. Choices in life. Right, before we actually go in and listen to the bridge, the first bridge, yeah, those snare rolls, they're already growing on me. That machine gun style snare roll. Now, when I gave this song to Jade, she'd been listening to me creating this. I gave 0 guidance. except I said, here's Tool's Opiate EP from 1992. This is what I'm going for. So I just said, make it as Tool-like as you can. And I think Jade has over-delivered on that. This bridge moves into a different time signature here. It goes into 9/8 time. Now, the reason it says 3/8 there is that the original drummer here in Logic Pro wasn't able to do a 9/8 time. So what I had to do is separate it into 3/8 chunks, and you can see that's why we got these in individual chunks. So a little limitation of the drummer there, but a good tip if you're playing around with the drummer, you're trying to find a time signature it doesn't like, sometimes you might just have to divide it up to use it as a metronome, because really that's all we were using the drummer for. Let's take a listen to this, because this is going to have 8 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So that's the rhythm. It's like ba ba boom ba ba da da da. So let's see what Jade has done with this.
They will try to do it to you. You have a choice. We need a voice. If you make it, they will break it. We need a change. We need a break.
Back into the 6/8 here. So what's good about this, and this is some great tips for creating drums if you're looking to create drums in your project, is variation. So I happened to watch the video when Jade was sort of talking and mixing and creating these drums. You'll notice that the fills have a lot of variation in them. So they're working on a theme, but if every time there was a break, it was the same or feel, the song would sound repetitive. So the thing with drums is to change it, not so much that it's distracting from the song and from the riff and from the vocals, but enough to create some interest there. And again, if you listen to Tool, you'll know what I mean, where but it's not basic, but it's a simple thing, but just variations on the theme can create really good interest, and that's what we've got here with these fills. You'll also notice that at the halfway point of this bridge, we go into a different rhythm, which I didn't originally have a thought of, but it kind of naturally flows. Like as the intensity of the vocal goes up, which I need to re-record those screamy parts a little bit better, because at the moment they're very much scratch vocals. But you can hear, like when you go to the snare kick, which I actually love, it's a very punk kind of sound here. So it's infusing a little bit of punk energy into a sort of a rock and grungy song. So let's listen to that change up again. So it basically becomes like a 4 on the floor, but instead of doing a 4 on the floor kick drum or bass drum, it's doing a 4 on the floor with the snare. We then jump back in to our verse, which goes back to our same 6/8 pattern that we had at the start. Let's take a listen.
People will judge you for things that you cannot control. Why do you care what they think?
That rhythm, dirtin, dirtin. The rhythm of the kick drum here is, in my view, perfection, because it like the temptation is to go boom, 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 cha, boom, boom. But if you listen to the kick, it's off the beat, and this is what you don't get from an auto drummer. You get the ability to just do something that sounds that you wouldn't necessarily think off the bat, but it fits perfectly for the rhythm with that daddle, daddle, daddle. Because if you listen to the difference between the durdle, 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 just take another listen.
Why do you care what they think of your...
Why do you care, little, little? So it's not why do you da 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 care what they. It's doing the offbeat of the vocal melody, which just creates this diddle 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 diddle. It just works perfectly. Let's jump into the 5/8 section here, where we move into a 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 and see what we got.
choices in life.
3 4 5 1. You You can see here that well, I moved that, didn't mean to do that, undo. You can see here that we come up here onto the ride now. So this varies it up. So you've got a similar kind of feel in the first section, but as soon as the lyrics, the vocals, and this organ sound comes in, see how we've moved here? We've moved up onto the ride. Just take a listen to this transition. I think it works really well. And then we move into this final sort of very basic time section that we'll play here at the end. So what you're seeing there is the other thing I'll point out here, that the great thing about using the drums, and look, if you don't have a Jade Starr in your life, you can program these in yourself. You also can grab your drummer track and turn it into a drum sum stack yourself. And I will cover that in a future video. I haven't really covered it in detail here because I don't use a lot of sum stacks. This is kind of my first time out because, again, it's the first year we've had Logic Pro on iPad to actually use for this. But yeah, it just gives you that ability to separate things out. And you'll hear here, if we just isolate these crashes, even though Jade's kit, she may only have one crash on her kit, but you can change it. So she's able to split out these crashes to give some variety and also some stereo panning. So take a listen to these and you'll hear them if you're in stereo on the left and the right. Over on your left, back on your right, over on your left, bring them back into the mix. And Jade has perfectly interpreted what I felt, not surprising because we're usually on the same page, what I felt this final section needed, which is just some very chilled drums. So the way I kind of look at this overall is that this is like, so this is building in. So this is like someone getting angry. So it's like talking, the lyrics of this song about choices in life. It's basically about people giving you grief and people talking about you and you feeling bad. That middle section is where it goes into the 9/8. That's kind of a bit angry and then you kind of chill. And then the 5/8 section is just like kind of chaotic. And then at the end of that, it's like, oh, it's exhaustion. So a song should kind of tell a story and sometimes take you through a journey, an emotional journey. And yes, that's getting a little bit, frou-frou and wanky if you want to say that. But it is part of what we do as creating, as musicians and music creators, is try and make a feel and get a mood. And I think you'll hopefully agree that moving from this 5/8 section back into a more of a common time, it's consistent. Suddenly you're in a 4/4. You're in a rhythm you understand. The drums are just like and then the vocals and going everything's fading out. It's just like you're collapsing in a heap at the end. So let's take another listen to this transition. With just the organ left, almost like as if you've collapsed on that final chord. So, yeah, I think it works. I think these drums are brilliant. Is there anything I'd change in here? Not really. There was a couple of sections in here that I was thinking at the start of the 9/8 or the 5/8, I forget. Start of one of these sections, I might just remove a couple of kicks, again, just to create a little bit of extra variety. And again, Jade's done a fabulous job here because she's put a lot of energy into a lot of this stuff. So maybe if I just want to kind of pull the brakes a little bit at the start in that lead-in intro part, I can just pull out some of those. And to do that, again, because we're here in the digital world, it's as simple as just going into the kick drum and tapping it. And you can either go edit there or you can just hit here in Logic Pro, the edit button down here. and you can actually see all of these kick drums that have been put in here. And we can change and adjust these. We can adjust the velocity. We can move them around. We can delete them entirely. We can edit this to our heart's content. I don't think there'll be a whole lot in the way of editing for two reasons. I think these are close to exactly what I was looking for, and I'm a lazy man. Let's be really honest. The reason that I love to outsource my drums and that I love the work that Jade does on these Songtember songs is that I don't have a lot of energy and patience for drum mixing and editing, because it's one of the harder things. And I guess it's a little tip for young players, is that if you've got someone you can collaborate with, then go ahead and do that. Or look, the auto drummer is fine. It's fine. But I think you'll agree that if we compare, let's just go into this section here, this 5/4 section where we've got Jade's drums. This is what Jade's drums sound like.
Too late to bury why it's nothing sacred. Too black
Versus our.
when you're too just created. Too much.
So yeah, I think you'll agree there that that's the. Sorry, I unmuted these ones. These are the unseparated drums we talked about before. So yeah, we're in a good place here in terms of the drums. Now let's before we finish off here, I did mention at the start that I had a few changes. So I like these guitars, but I'd added a third guitar and. Unfortunately, Logic Pro at this stage, and maybe we'll learn some tweaks and some workarounds, but both Jade and myself played around with how we could move forward with this, and it was really difficult to do. But what I did find that we could do is, because I created a second guitar to create a kind of wall of guitar sounds, and I think it was this one. Yeah, so what I actually did in my newer version of this is this guitar that's doing these long single chords are doing more of the traditional rhythm style. This one I put on in the middle, and then this one was originally the left and this one was the right. In the newer mix I've got here, I've thrown this one in the middle, and then I've got a right and a left. So let's just see, before we finish off, if I can actually find a way to do this. This is all trial and error here. So if we duplicate that one, this will become our left, and this one, if we rename it, we tap it and we go rename. Let's make this one our center guitar. And look, these are all scratch tracks anyway, so worst case scenario, I just need to re-record these guitars. They're probably getting re-recorded anyway, so it's not a big deal. Let's just rename this one to the left. Now, what we should be able to do is go back to where I recorded this additional guitar part, copy that one, and then paste it in here. Now, I don't think here in Logic Pro it'll bring in the settings, but we're about to find out. So in this case, we've got that one. It's got the noise gate, vintage drive, amp designer, compressor. I don't think in Logic Pro it brings in the same settings. I think it'll use whatever we have on this track when we paste it in, because you can't really paste in whole tracks. You're kind of just pasting in the audio waveforms when we do this. But let's find out. So we'll close out of that one. That'll save version 9. We'll come back here into Logic Pro for iPad and into my Songtember folder, which I've cleaned up a bit. I've got an archive folder there. So this was my Choices 6, where I added this additional guitar. So there's the first guitar. So these are the two that are in there at the moment. And it's this one here that is our new one. So with all those selected, let's see if we right-click on this and we copy, because that should have all of these selected. Yep. Let's go back to the other track, and if we paste it in right at the start here, it should work. Drum roll, please. Very, very relevant, considering that this video is all about drums, that we have a drum roll. So we'll leave that there just to see what this does. If we tap here, if we paste at playhead, it's thrown our guitar in, but yeah, it hasn't copied over any of our amp settings, which is fine because we can re-add them, or we can just, I think we're just using a preset anyway at this stage. So if we go back to this one, it should just be a matter of finding the amp settings that we had here. If we tap on that one, so this one, I think if we go to here, we were using the Tube King by the looks of it. So we've got the noise gate, squash, amp designer, compressor, and the channel EQ on there. So if we find the Tube King audio patch and add it to the guitar in our new project, we should be back to pretty much where we were after a little bit of panning. So let's do that now. We'll come back here. We will go to our audio patches by tapping on that one. That's the instrument patches. We need to go out of that one and go to audio patches. And you can see here at the moment, it's got the Rio Grande there. If instead we just search out the Tube King, you better get on down to the Tube King. And yep, that's what we want. So that should now, if we tap it, there we go. It's now replaced all of those because I've got the replace on here. If you don't have that replace on, you need to actually drag it over, but I like the replace option there. So we've now got this sound on this left guitar. Let's just come back and make sure that all has been as we expected. Yes, but it's still on the right. Yep, so now we just need to do a little bit of panning. Now for this, I like to use this little channel here because we can just easily grab this and pan it, and you can just check each one. So now you've got that on the right, that on the left, and we can move this guitar by double tapping into the center. So now if we bring these three guitars together, let's just solo, wrong button. Sometimes it gives me a right click instead of a left click. Let's go these three guitars now. What we should have is the wall of guitar sound we're kind of looking for here, with these two patterns doing their thing on the left and the right with different guitar tones, and this one going right up the middle. Let's take a listen. There's our left and right guitars playing a very similar part. And then just to give it some guts up the middle. Bring this back into our mix.
Why do you care what they think of your choices in life? Choices in
Just gives our guitars a little bit more power there. Now we'll need to do some more mixing to adjust this, because you're probably noticing there that the bass is getting a little bit buried now. And this is the problem. When you start adding a lot of things, you might need to tweak some things. But I'm pretty happy with the bass sound that we have. And in fact, I haven't done this, but let's listen to the bass and the drums, because Jade has a knack of getting bass and drums to sit really nicely together. Let's take a listen. How funky is that? I really enjoy this 5/8 part. And I can't remember who it was that suggested that the bass come up here, but in one of our previous songwriting episodes, someone said, yeah, your guitars are nice and low and chunky. I think your bass actually needs to be more sort of in the mid rather than being right down there. Otherwise, it's going to be too messy. And I think you're right. I think the higher bass sound works well. A little bit of fuzz on there just to give it some drive, and along with the guitar tones. Yeah, I think this song is coming together quite well. So I hope you enjoyed this. A huge thank you and shout out to Jade Starr. Do check the links down in the description, because you'll be able to jump over to her channel and see what she's done with these drums in the last episode. So I do highly recommend doing that, because it really does show you how she went through, how she created this drum part and really edited it down, because that's the cool thing about drums is you can play them, or you can use your drummer to create them, but then you can dive into the editor. You can quantize them, you can move them around, you can change velocities, you can change kit pieces, you can do so much with the drums. There's a whole drum kit designer here in Logic Pro. Logic Pro has some amazing drum options that we're only scratching the surface of here, but this is going to be a straightforward rock song, and you can see there, we're actually going to end up with more tracks of just drums than probably the rest of the song. So it'll be an interesting one. But yeah, it's all coming together nicely. So I just want to say again, thank you to Jade Starr. Thank you to you for being part of Songtember. Don't forget, you can jump on over to studiolivetoday.com/Songtember. If you want to learn all about GarageBand or Logic Pro, studiolivetoday.com is the place to go. And as we say at the end of each and every show here on Studio Live Today, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, and rock on. Keep creating. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.